Okay. It's 7 o'clock. You know what that means. The Save Scranton Radio Show. Okay, everyone. Glad you could make it. Glad you're all here. I'm your host, the one and only, yours truly, Gary St. Fleur. And this is my show, the Save Scranton Show. Or should I say our show, the People's Show. In the last post, someone commented that I didn't put a number to call in. This is a talk show after all, and we need people to call in. So the number to call in is 570-921-2344. That's 570-921-2344. One more time. 570-921-2344. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being here tonight. It's a nice, cool. Who am I kidding? It's a cold day. It was actually snowing today, and I was really hoping that spring would stay and we would have nice weather, because I am not a big fan of wintry weather. But whatever. What can you do? You just deal with it and hope that there are better days to come. And most likely they will be. Okay. I hope everyone's having a lovely evening despite the bad weather. And that we should get right to the show. Okay. I want to talk about the recent controversy that's going on in Philadelphia. For those of you who don't know, everyone should know. Last week, I believe, 2 young African-American males were arrested in a Starbucks in Philadelphia for doing nothing. Okay? It was videotaped. The video went viral. There's a lot of controversy. The CEO spoke on the subject. The chief of police spoke on the subject. The mayor spoke on the subject. Everyone has been weighing in. And I have just been perplexed about the whole entire thing. Now, for anyone who knows me, I tend to be contrarian, but not like deliberately so. I'm not just being devil's advocate just to play devil's advocate. I usually attempt to see both sides of the story. You know, my background in philosophy hails from the Socratic tradition, and Socrates, or a lot of the ancient philosophers in Greece at that time, used to promote the idea of being able to see both sides of the equation. You know, even if you don't agree with a point of view, you should be able to at least understand where the person is coming from. And I've always been a very stern advocate of that. And I try to see both sides of the coin. So we have the narrative that's crafted by the CNN and a lot of people. The narrative is you have 2 young black African-American males waiting for their friend, doing nothing wrong. All of a sudden, the police gangs up on them, arrest them, and abscond them away. That is what's being depicted. Now, my question is, you know, Philadelphia is not your most rural place. It's not the kind of place where there's not a lot of diversity. There's not a lot of, you know, probably open-minded individuals. So my first issue with this presentation is that I kind of find it difficult to believe. Maybe a Starbucks in a predominantly white or rural area, okay, I can see that. But in Philadelphia, I don't know. So that's my first reservation. My second reservation is that I started doing some research. I started looking into the issues to find out what exactly transpired. You know, were these young men just like it's hard to believe that they just were arrested without any warning. So what I come to find out is that they were told by the manager or by the personnel on staff that they had to buy something or leave. In addition, I believe they were actually told by the police to leave before, and a supervisor had to come on shift to talk to them and eventually arrest them. So what I'm seeing here is two different stories. One was that they didn't do anything. Another one has to do with loitering, right? Now, of course, I'm very aware of the fact that probably other people were loitering in Starbucks. Maybe other people were loitering there and they didn't say anything to them. I don't know, but that's a possibility. But here's my question. If Starbucks or some restaurants, I know McDonald's does, and Wendy's does, and Burger King does, they have this policy where if you don't buy something, you can be asked to leave. Therefore, why not comply? In my mind, if they're just requesting that you buy something or leave, just buy something and then you can stay and do what you need to do. Just to demand the right to stay there and not buy anything, to me, it's kind of odd. Again, if I'm wrong on this, please let me know. I'd love to hear from you all. You can call in and share your perspective on the issue. But I think that I don't know if this is worth really all this controversy, all this protesting. And now the CEO claims that he's going to shut down, I think, 8,000 stores on May 31st to talk about racism. I'm not even sure if there's an issue with racism. It might be. It's a great possibility. But even if it is, it's like the things that I try to advocate is priorities, right? It's impossible. It's even cognitively impossible to care about everything with equal attention and force. It's not possible. You can't care about everything. So when people tell me that, they care about gun control, they care about the environment, they care about racism, they care about women's rights, I'm like, yeah, right. Yeah, right. You care in the sense that you probably like a comment on Facebook or you'll talk about it amongst your friends. But in terms of giving actual effort and energy towards it, yeah, right. We don't have time. Our time is limited. Therefore, we have to choose our battles. We have to choose our battles and focus our concentration on things. Therefore, when the media changes these cycles, every week or every other week, there's a new hysteria or sensation. To give you an example, a couple of weeks ago, there was the gun control. Weeks before that, women's rights. Week before that, probably the mass shooting in Las Vegas. Weeks before that, some other controversy. And it keeps going on and on and on and changing. People rise up in fury and ire, talk about it on Facebook, talk about it amongst their friends. There's a bunch of hashtags and tweets and messages and shares. People start blocking each other. And then nothing happens. You go on to something else. We talk about something else. And I find it very puzzling because it's like this passion that you're exhibiting or this passion that we're exhibiting, what does it mean? Like, do you really have an issue with Starbucks having a loitering policy and selective enforcement of this loitering policy? And if they do, is that really affecting the black community? Like, is the black community really desperate for coffee to the point where if they don't have access to Starbucks or they don't have access to hang out in Starbucks, it's detrimental to them in some way? Versus things like the prison industrial complex or the war on drugs or the public school system. The public school system in America is atrocious. And yet that doesn't seem to get as much passion from individuals as these claims of racism. And my thing is that, yeah, I don't deny that racism exists, but I think that having poor school options is way more critical, way more important than Starbucks asking some loiterers to leave regardless of their skin color. I think that corruption, anyone who knows about Save Scranton and my many articles that I write about the city of Scranton, it's a prime example where I think that everyone in Scranton should primarily be focused on the corruption of Scranton and how it's affecting them economically, environmentally, psychologically, even spiritually. That should be in the forefront of their minds. Everything else should fall to the back burner. When people have this thing where they just want to avoid the elephant in the room, right? There's a giant elephant in the room. We can call that elephant the Naples. We can call that elephant organized crime. We can call that elephant corruption. It's a giant, and it's right there, crapping, making noise, and people are talking about, the drapes or the couch or maybe the carpet. We should change the carpet. And oftentimes, you have these things in Scranton. I remember one time I was in this meeting, and the meeting was all about how to change Scranton. I think the Chamber of Commerce was putting up some money to create an initiative to create a task force or a program of some sort to try to change or improve Scranton. And so I went to this meeting. Alex Mufatis, who's the owner of City Print, if you have any printing needs, you go over there and check it out. He was the one who invited me to it. And so I came and I heard this presentation. Now, the presentation was hosted by someone who claimed to be a consultant, and he was discussing that, what are the strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and threats of Scranton. It's called a SWOT analysis. And he began talking about Scranton. And I said, listen, Scranton has a lot of weaknesses to the point where till this very day, I have yet to entertain, to accommodate anyone I know from New York City in Scranton. I have yet to do it. If they ask me, hey, Gary, you want me to come hang in Scranton? I tell them, no. And the reason why is I'm 100% certain they'll be upset with me. They'll say, what is this? What is going on? Oh, I want to go back to New York City as soon as possible. So I have yet to even... And so they wanted to make the city attractive to outsiders. And I was like, you make the city attractive to outsiders by having a functioning city, a city that doesn't oppose innovation, experimentation, that does right by its people, that isn't trying to rob them. For example, there was a meeting with the pensions, the fire pensions, the police pensions, and the non-uniform pensions. And they're all discussing of what they're going to do with the money that they obtained from the sale of the sewer authority. So basically, in other words, they sold a public assets that belongs to the people, they privatized it, and they're taking the money and giving it to themselves. Okay, how does this benefit the city? It doesn't. Will taxes now go down? It won't. So what's the net gain? There is no net gain. There is no positivity. There's no upside. The city basically functions for itself. When I say the city functions for itself, I mean the people who are working for the city or attached to the city, they benefit at the expense of everyone else. Everyone else. And somehow you're going to make the city attractive to other people. In other words, if you come into Scranton, you're coming to this place to get shaken down. You incur a debt because the per capita debt of this place for every individual here, man, woman, and child, is upwards of $30,000. So you're going to inherit that. You're going to inherit languishing property values because people don't want to buy properties here. Properties are deteriorating because there's a distinction or decision people have to make in this area. Either they pay their property taxes or they improve their homes. They choose to pay their property taxes and their homes languish. Now, we all know the story. I'm pretty sure no one who's listening to this broadcast is surprised. And yet, when it comes to talking about how to fix the city, no one brings up the Naples or the Buffalino family or the corruption or the backdoor deals or the legal fees that lawyers get paid or the assets that are sold or the taxes that are raised. Like, in fact, last election cycle, no politician besides myself was willing to discuss those things. Corruption and the fact that taxes need to be lowered, that the people need more disposable income, that the people don't have income, how can they survive? And again, if people are being told to come here just to be taxed, who in their right minds would agree to that? When a good increases in price, according to standard economics, people forego it. They stop buying it. They either substitute it or they buy less of it, right? If I like, chicken and the price of chicken increases, I might go to steak or beef and vice versa. So people are sensitive to prices. So therefore, if the cost of living in the area is high or higher than other areas and surrounding it, and the quality of life is low, why would someone agree to that arrangement? If anyone doubts this, Talk to university students. Talk to University of Scranton students, the Marywood students. The way they talk about this area, it should offend everyone. It should offend everyone. They're like, no, I can't wait to graduate. They don't even leave or venture off campus. And that's the general feel. And the thing is that when you bring this up, some people want to say, oh, you're being negative. That's almost akin to going to a doctor, and a doctor is telling you the kind of diseases you have, and you tell the doctor he's being negative. Like, no, it's not negative to talk about the illnesses you have. It would be negative to not acknowledge them and do something about that. And this is what we need to do. And this is like what we need to focus on: priorities, things that matter for all of us and that affect us deeply. And so when these things happen, like Starbucks or things that have no real bearing on anyone's lives, it's a distraction for us all. We need to be focused on the things that affect us in our day-to-day lives. What affects you in a day-to-day life? What affects us in our day-to-day lives? I will tell you, number one thing that affects you in your day-to-day life, and this cannot be diminished in any sense of the word, is the amount of money you have in your pocket. There is nothing, and I mean nothing, that I can think of that has more effect on the quality of life you will live than that. And it's not necessarily the money itself, right? Because I often think that money is a signal or a sign of something, right? It's not necessarily a resource within itself, because we don't accumulate money just for its sake. We do it in order to get things, right? It's the things that we want that money allows us to get. And so money is usually like symbolic of something else, right? A draw on the labor of others, the command of labor, they're able to acquire things. Now, there are two ways really to go about that. Money is the most convenient way for most people, but there's another way. There is another way. Now, I was talking to an individual about this the other day, and I mentioned to him that what fascinated me is the way certain communities function and are capable of providing services for themselves and for people in their community without needing money. A good example of this is Mormons. In Utah, if you're a part of a Mormon church, they have a practice where, let's say you have a house and you want to build an additional wing. They will, as a congregation, come and help you build it. They will even let you borrow money to pay for the materials and then come and help you build it free of cost. Now that's amazing, right? But if you think about it, the bedrock of society is community. And communities can't sustain themselves for thousands of years. That's how it has been. But of course, something's afoot. Something's not the same. Communities these days are ravished by external forces. And I think these external forces is that we've lost our sense of purpose. We've lost our ability to rely on one another or to rely on ourselves. And the more we empower these institutions, whether it's government or corporations, the smaller we become, the more helpless we become, because we believe that these things, these institutions, are all powerful, almost like gods, when we fail to realize that they derive all their significance from us. Like, just imagine if the people in Scranton just decided, like, instead of, last voting cycle, I believe only about 12,000 and 15,000 people voted. Okay, there's 75,000 people in Scranton. Now, what if we flip that around? What if instead of only 15,000 people voted, what if only 15,000 people paid taxes and the rest didn't? The rest did what they did with voting. They said, no, I'm not paying my taxes. I can't be bothered. I assure you, within 24 hours, the government will collapse. Right? And there's nothing you can do about it. We're talking about roughly 60,000 people not paying taxes. Some of them are children, so let's say roughly 40,000 not paying taxes. What are you going to do? To take thousands of homes that nobody wants, arrest thousands of people. It's not going to happen. They would just, as they say in urban parlance, to just take the L. And that's how powerful people are, and yet they don't believe it because they don't have that unity, right? They don't have that collective ability to rely on one another to say, listen, if I'm going to do this, you're going to do it too. We're in this together. But that can change. It has changed. You know, if we look at other movements, if we look at other events throughout history, throughout time, even in other countries, people have been able to, you know, overcome whatever issues that were there at the time to come together, to rally, and to change things. And again, if you want to call in, the number is 570-921-2344. Right now I have the con, and I'm talking about prioritizing what's important. That's very key. Very key. It almost seems like the media is obsessed, utterly obsessed with making trivial things seem as important, not even as important, but even more important than the things that are really, really important. Like think about the whole gun control controversy. Anyone knows me, because I'm in Scranton. Oh, I need my guns. You know, I didn't mention Naples' name in every single broadcast of this show. And the more popular it gets, the more I get on the radar, the more I'm going to need my guns in case I get visited by some goons and I have to shoot. So I need my guns. I can't believe anyone in Scranton would ever question the need to have guns when you have a government that is corrupt. When you have a government where I've been told that the police, I'm not saying all the police, but some of the police officers will definitely come and threaten you if you're doing something that, you know, creates instability for the corrupt regime. Now, I was told that either the head of the police union told someone that, you know, things happen every night or crimes happen all the time and it never gets solved, nothing comes of it. And if that's not a threat, I don't know what is. So if that's real, yeah, you're gonna need your guns. You know, I can't imagine how bold it would be if they didn't even have the Second Amendment. But nevertheless, that's neither here or there. The truth is, statistically speaking, the chances of anyone being shot is about 0.002%. That means that you have a 99.998% chance of never being shot. And yet, the media makes it seem like there's an epidemic of shootings. And what's fascinating is that you can do that with everything. If you just report a lot of something, you can make it seem like it's an epidemic. Prime example. More young people die from bike accidents than gun violence. But the media doesn't report deaths from bike accidents. If they did, we would start to say, well, maybe we need to start banning bikes, or maybe these bikes need to change and be regulated because they're unsafe. So the media picks and choose what they depict and present, and it's because of how dramatic it is. Another example, for young kids, for kids probably below the age of 13, pools are more dangerous than guns. A lot of kids tend to die from pools because they don't know how to swim. They fall into it and they die. It's a very unfortunate situation, and yet that's not reported. That's not discussed. You know, no one says that pools need to be, you know, something to happen with pools. And I can go on and on and on. I can go the same thing about high corn fructose syrup and obesity. You know, alcoholism or alcohol-related deaths, which are way more than gun-related deaths. And yet we focus on guns. And the question is, again, why? And I have a discussion with people, and they tell me things like, oh, it's because, you know, when you drink alcohol, you kill yourself. Someone told me this. Or you're hurting yourself. And I was like, no, you can get into a car and hurt other people, and that happens all the time. And they said that, yeah, but you don't hurt as much people as people hurt with guns. And I was like, if you look at statistics, and I get it, we're not intuitive statisticians. When it comes to numbers, we don't react the same way than when we do with narrative, stories, and the visual. We're visual. It's our evolution. We lived in environments where reacting to danger was our primary instinctual pattern. So things like numbers are pretty abstract and do not generate the same compulsion that danger, the idea of danger or the story of danger does. We love horror. We love Halloween. We love fear. Not necessarily because we love it per se, because it gets our attention. And of course it does, because if our ancestors didn't react to danger, we wouldn't be here today. So we're built with a mechanism to react to danger or perceive danger. And the media exploits this. They exploit it. They exploit our compassion. They exploit our desire for justice. Like, just think about all the things that they promote or that they showcase that never changes. I'll give you a good example of this. So I run a foundation called Colleen Foundation. I've ran it for years. We take trips to Haiti yearly, and we bring students from schools all across the U.S. to Haiti to volunteer. Now, the first time I was on ground to do this was back, I believe, in 2010. It was the same year as the earthquake. Now, what shocked me was when I was on ground and I saw devastation, I saw everything, is how the media, nonprofits, or the NGOs operated and acted. Now, what I mean by this is that they all converged on this spot on Haiti to do activity that was mainly meaningless. Like, for instance, they would give away rice that was then taken and sold on the black market. They were living in hotels. They were taking pictures. It was more, tourism and just a cultural tourism or a safari of devastation than actual concern to help people. There were times when CNN and Anderson Cooper would take videos of people trapped under rubble. I'm like, how do you have time to take a video? How do you have time to take a camera, right? And videotape someone trapped under rubble instead of having the desire to actually say, we need to help this person. Let's help this person. And that's something about news that always gets to me, that their obsession with filming tragedy or seeing people in pain trumps everything else because of ratings, right? It's like, yeah, these Haitian people who are trapped on the rubbles is brought to you by Pfizer. Oh yeah, these bodies that we're seeing thrown in a pile is brought to you by Geico or whatever sponsor they have. Like, they showcase these devastations, and it's all for profit. It's all for profit. They make millions off of this stuff. And I'm certain that if you know anything about technology, their ability to track trends and track our reaction to things, they know what gets us. They know what gets us going. They know what we react to. This is why Facebook is in trouble right now, because the amount of information and data that they have on people is downright frightening. They know everything about you, and they use this against us. They use this to manipulate us. If CNN or any of these media outlets were really concerned about the black community, like they were really concerned about racism, what is the number one thing that people can agree upon that affects or afflicts the black community? We could probably come to an agreement that in minority communities, or in a lot of places that are dominated by the minorities, the school system there is not the most rigorous. It's not like Hotchkiss or Phillips Exeter or Phillips Academy. That's the top high schools in a country, and these not public high schools. They're preparatory high schools or boarding schools or elite boarding schools. It's not like that. Or how about the war on drugs, which it's almost uniform. We all know that it disproportionately affects minorities. Why not deal with that? Like, why not fix that instead of worrying about Starbucks? It's like, you have people languishing in prison as we speak. 50% of the people in prison are nonviolent offenders, languishing as this broadcast occurs. And yet what gets our attention is someone being told to buy something or leave. Wow. Like, it's times like this I begin wondering, like, as a people, what do we really care about? What do we really value? You know, I've asked the people around me all the time, do we value, like, what is it, money? Do we value, I don't know. I often think I don't know. Because I know what we claim to value. I know what we say that we do. But the evidence is wanting when it comes to actually seeing the effort we put towards it. To give an example, I would tell people that almost everyone you talk to is pretty convinced that they are either educated or smart, or they believe that being educated and being smart is important. You rarely ever encounter someone who denies this. Nevertheless, if you ask them, okay, what's the last book you read? Nah, they shrug their shoulders. Or, what studying are you doing? What kind of research are you doing on your own that has nothing to do with school? Shrug their shoulders again. Do you have you read about any particular subjects that fascinate you? Have you done any in-depth studies or research on these subjects? Nah. But immediately, if you tell them that, well, you don't seem to really care about education, they get offended. They'll say, oh, how dare you question, my intelligence and my capacities for understanding information. And it's like, we seem to value the appearance of something more than the reality of it. As long as we appear to care, it doesn't seem like we do anything past that. And of course, this is not always the case, right? I'm not saying that all of us are like this or that this is always the situation, but I'm talking about as a society. Look at our society. It's reflective of us. We can blame the Naples or the corruption all we want, but we also have to come to terms with it's without permission, right? And people will say, no, I don't agree with this. I don't accept this. Really though? Like, really? If none of us accept this, how is it possible? Wouldn't we stop it? I'm pretty sure that we think about history, like the Nazi Germany. We don't look at the Nazis and claim that they're victims completely, right? We say, hey, you guys were in on this. Regardless of how you felt about it, you probably was afraid, sure. But you weren't convicted enough to overcome that fear to stop this. And I believe it's the same with everything else. People tell me, Gary, you have a lot of balls. You got big balls. You speak about things that's going on. You might get in trouble. And in my mind, it's like, I don't see what else I could do different. When it comes down to it, I can't control how long I live on this planet. I can't control when I live or die. What I can control is what I stand for, what I believe. What I can do is stay true to my beliefs. Because as far as I'm concerned, people can take anything from you. They can take your life. But they can't take your convictions. They can't take what you stand for. And so as a society, or even as individuals, what do we really stand for? What is our values? And if it's not reflective in how we live, do we really have those values? If we as a society really valued education, would our public school system be ranked one of the worst around the world? If we're going to be honest with ourselves, we probably value entertainment more than we value education. We value being idle, relaxing and hanging out and watching television or watching sports more than we care about our neighbors, more than we care about the education of our own children. And we're just in denial. We're in denial that we're like this. We're almost experts at come up with excuses as to why our society is the way it is, when next generations won't be so charitable. They will not excuse us, right? Just like we don't excuse the people of the past. When we think about what happened with slavery, we don't look at these people and say, oh, they were busy. No, we say it was heinous. These people were immoral. And they're probably going to say the same thing about us. They'll say, why did we allow our society to be this way? Why didn't we do something about it? The things that I hear is that people are busy. I don't understand what people are busy about. How can you be more busy than to actually value your life, your surroundings, your children? Like this should be paramount. There's nothing more valuable than that. And I get it. If you're gonna say, they say oftentimes, we don't know what to do. I'm pretty sure if you Googled anything, you could come up with at least the initial beginnings of a plan to do something. But do we care? Do we? Do we care if the children who live in this city have no future? Does that bother us? Do we care if our economy is being inflated by funny money and zero interest rates, and which is inflationary? Do we care that young people graduate college now with on average $100,000 in debt that will not be disbarred through bankruptcy? They will have it forever. Do we care? You know, I read an article recently that the budget that was passed increases our debt burden as a nation by another $1 trillion, a couple of $1 trillion. And of course, it's like we're selling the future of our children and grandchildren to have things now. And then my mother, questions me, asks me, Gary, why don't you want to have kids? And I tell her I have a qualm with stealing from my own children. I don't want to steal from my kids because that's what I would be doing by having them, because I know what's going to happen. We think that we can just allow things to happen without any consequences. God, nature, divine, whatever you believe in is not that charitable. Reality will always weigh in. Reality will always have the final say. We can say that we're all victims and it's not our fault. But when it comes to the consequences, we all bear them regardless of our role in the situation. When Scranton goes bankrupt, not just Scranton, but many municipalities, many states, we can complain about it, but it won't change anything. When Great Depressions happen, when collapses happen, and they do, I tell people, and it's so sad. If you study history, if you're a student of history, you have to come to terms with the reality that bad things, unfortunate situations, are normal. They're normal. Periods of peace are the exception. There's so much the exception that there are terms for it, like Pax Romana or Pax Americana. They say, wow, this is a period of time when it was relatively peaceful. That's amazing, because normally it's upheavals, it's plagues, it's wars, it's migrations, it's problems. That's normal. But for 10,000 years that we know of recorded human history, it's marked by tumultuous periods. On and on and on. Now, the reason I bring this up is because when we think about today and we think about the future, we have to be sober-minded in this. This notion that we think that things are just going to remain status quo, undisturbed, is delusional. It is not reflective of the past. It's not empirically sound. What is likely, according to the evidence, according to history, is that it's not a matter of if America will face a disaster situation. It's when and how. How bad will it be? How many people will die? And people think that, that's crazy. Like, how can that be crazy when this country was founded because people had to flee their own countries to come here? That something happened in their country that warranted their survival, needed them to flee. And now it sounds crazy that something can happen to America, where we'll probably be in the same situation. And it's sad. It's sad because, if you do study history and you study these declines, like how does a great civilization decline? What happens to it? How did Rome collapse? What happened to Persia? The Babylon Empire, Alexander the Great's empire. What happened? Like, how does these things happen? And what's interesting is that, especially for Rome, which is very instructive, that there are people who say it could have been avoided. That there were things happening that if enough attention was paid, it could have been avoided. And I seriously believe we're in the same situation now, where we're on the cusp of major situations that are bad. And we're complacent. We don't probably appreciate the severity of how bad the things that loom in the horizon are. The next generation is going to have to face with a pension crisis where all these pensions across the country are not funded and are destined to collapse. They will face automation where computers and robots will take jobs away. They will face antiquated and dilapidated infrastructure because we have not put monies into sustaining our infrastructure or even improving it. And thanks to our incursions in the Middle East, constant bombardments of military issues and terrorist attacks and people across the globe hating us. And my generation and the younger ones, this is our inheritance. This is what we look forward to. And people then have the nerve to ask me why I get so bent out of shape when I discuss these things. That I truly believe that a lot of people just don't believe that things are that bad or can be that bad. That, a collapse is not possible. Like, we know who does take it very seriously. It's very fascinating that, like in the CIA or the FBI or in the many intelligence agencies or the government, they're already prepared. Like, they have these documents or scenarios. They talk about it where they say, listen, if things hit the fan, we have these private bunkers, right? We need to protect ourselves. So they're preparing while the rest of society is completely oblivious to anything, possibly going wrong. Like, nothing can happen. Nothing can happen. It's like, and the thing is, we heard about the Great Depression. We heard about the American Civil War. We heard about the American Revolution. We heard about the many upheavals in England or France, the French Revolution. Well, before that, the many wars that they had, the 30-year war, the 40-year war, this war, that war, in Italy, but the countless city-states, how many times they rose and fell, all this time. And yet we think somehow we're immune to these things. That our economy, which is very vulnerable right now, is not susceptible to a problem. Now, give up and relent, right? Not to just say, throw your hands in the air, eat and drink because tomorrow we'll die. The key is to say that we need to be responsible. We need to embrace a doctrine of responsibility where we realize that we are responsible for our society. That whatever we dislike about our society has to become a reflection of each and every one of us. That we have to say that we cannot tell our children or children's children that our society is not reflective of our own values. Because no matter how strong the Naples of the world are, the corporations or the politicians, we outnumber them. We outnumber them 1,000,000 to 1. So my question is, if we do not allow it, if we don't accept it, how can it possibly be? When you research something like the Yugoslavian revolution and the collapse of that country, what was fascinating is it happened like live on television. I forgot the prime minister's name at the time or the president's name at the time, but he was appealing to the people, talking to them, trying to win them back because they were in complete disbelief. They didn't believe anymore. And at that moment, you actually saw the death of that country. And that's all it took for the people to say, no, we don't agree anymore. We saw it with Ukraine, right? Like with Ukraine. Ukraine literally said, we don't want whatever prime minister or president to be in charge anymore. We're going to take over. And it was done. The key is for us to do the same thing. To be willing to do the same thing. And it all begins with us. It really does. It all begins with us realizing that we are our society, we are responsible, and that we can change things. I think the greatest manipulation that the elites, the media does, is getting us to believe that we're not capable. And it makes sense, right? It's like, why do they spend so much time distracting us? Why do they spend so much time tracking our data? Why do they spend so much time manipulating us if we weren't a threat? Think about that. If the people weren't a threat, why do they take so much precautions? Why do they spend so much energy keeping us at bay, keeping us divided, keeping us distracted, keeping us feeling bad, keeping our diets horrible, keeping us sluggish, keeping us downtrodden? Because they know probably more than anyone else. They know that it's just, if it's just enough, it didn't even have to be that a lot of us, just enough of us woke up and decided to change things, it would be over for them. And so if you get anything from this broadcast, we need to prioritize your life, prioritize your goals. Put yourself first, not in a selfish way, but in a determined, purposeful way. And that's where it starts. Responsibility is, as far as I'm concerned, one of the most important things in the world, because that is the beginning of empowerment. You can't be empowered if you're not responsible, because then you're not in control of your situation. And once you lose control of your situation, how can you have power? Now, I thank you for all listening. We're coming up on 13 minutes left in this broadcast. I just want to thank all of you for taking the time out to listen. I truly appreciate it. And I hope that you share this show with your friends. I'm going to, again, upload recordings. So this will be uploaded on the website, /radio. And it'll be dated. So you have the date of the archive, and you can listen to this at your time. Share it with your leisure. That'll be awesome. And I'm really looking forward to my listeners, getting better, taking the step, believing these things because they're real. They are so real. I live them. Like, you will be a tremendously better person once you change your perspective and begin realizing that whatever is in my control is my responsibility, and I can change those things. And then it grows from there. Life is really a series of habits, and the smallest habit we cultivate can grow tremendously. And it's like, the famous writer Malcolm Gladwell, he talks about in his book, Outliers, that there's actually a number attached to greatness. He says it's 10,000 hours. So that's how long it takes to perfect an ability. If you spend 10,000 hours doing it, you'll be a professional and expert at it. Now, what that basically means for all of us, if we want to achieve something and want to be good at something, if we spend enough time on it, we definitely can do it, because that's what separates people who have accomplished and from people who have not. And I know it's hard to believe it. It's hard to believe if you don't see it, right? It's hard to believe it if everything around you is telling you different. But isn't that the power of the human mind? The fact that we can imagine and create? Our ability to create is the single most powerful ability we have. That we can imagine, we can envision, and then we can work to bring that to fruition. What's amazing is that we now have so many options for creating. You can use YouTube and make videos. You can learn anything you want from Google. Anything. I learned how to create this radio show from Googling it. And then take the step. Take the step. All right, we're catching on the closing of the show, and I just want to leave on a positive note. and say, we have the benefit of an instruction or a guide, one could say, of how to remedy all the situations that are before us. Because I don't even though they seem new, they're not. And I think we have the wisdom of the past, right? We have that legacy of those who came before to see, what's needed. And if we just draw on that, we can do it. I'm certain if you think about it, America is getting away from its initial principles that founded this country. Now, I'm not saying that America was ever perfect. Obviously, human nature is very corruptible. But the principles, the idea of a law, constitutional law, and everyone's under it. The notion that the people would be the government, that the government would be by the people, for the people, and that the people will be responsible for their society. That is what the Constitution says. It's what it says. That we are ultimately the final arbitrators of what happens in this nation. And the sad thing is that we no longer believe that. The fact is, most people don't even vote. 50%, I believe that in the last national election, only 50% of people voted. And yet we complain about how our society is when we're not even involved in the political process. We're not involved, we complain about our communities, but we're not involved in the civic aspects of our communities. But all that could change. All that will change if we just take that step. And I think that, wow, it's been like a theme. I didn't even think about it. But for the past couple of days, I've been really on this theme about the step. It's kind of similar to what Tony Robbins talks about when he talks about breakthroughs. And his whole career. Like, can you imagine this guy, Tony Robbins? You have someone who made an entire career off of motivating people. And I find that amazing. I find it amazing because it's the most immaterial thing ever, right? It's not tangible. He doesn't create a product in a sense of anything you can touch or hold. It's a feeling. Like he sells a feeling. He sells a belief that makes people inspired. And he's made like almost $500 million doing it. Now that doesn't tell you that you can make money without money, because he doesn't need any money to talk, and that's what he does. He just speaks. He speaks. People feel a way, and they pay for it. They pay to feel that empowerment that he gives them through his motivational speeches. And that just goes to show that there's value in things that are not necessarily tangible. Like, you don't need, and I'm pretty sure if you think about it very closely, there's so much of our society that's built on that, right? That people making a living with doing something that doesn't necessarily require anything physical. You have YouTubers, you have radio hosts like this, right? You have writers who write. They would tell stories. J.K. Rowling built a $1 billion empire from being an amazing storyteller. Amazing storyteller. I said it last week. I gotta say it again. Find your passion. Find what you really want to do. Find out why you're here on this planet. And put some effort towards it. You will not be let down. I promise you. Okay, we're about to wrap this up. If you want to contact me, you can always do so at savescranton1@gmail.com. I thank everyone for taking the time out to listen to the show. I'm going to start advertising more. There will be a raffle that I'll be advertising on Facebook. Be sure to pay attention to that. You're gonna win. I'm not. I'm still deciding what the prize will be. I'll decide by tonight. But it's gonna be like one of those things where if you like the 10th caller, yeah, you win, and I will send you a gift. Trust me, you'll like it. It won't be anything like strange or silly. I'm thinking of gift card. That's my thought process. Because, I'm one of those people too where I don't like necessarily receiving a gift. I mean, I'm appreciative, of course. I'm not going to not be appreciative if someone gave me a gift. But I would always rather someone just give me cash or a gift card so I can get something for myself. Because I probably know what I need a lot better than someone else does. But of course, it's thought that counts. But if I did have a choice and someone asked me what I would want, I would just want to give me a gift card so I can go and get what I want. And so that's probably what the prize will be. It will be a gift card. I just have to finalize which store it'll be to. I don't want it to be like something that doesn't have as much utility as possible. Something that you can use that has almost everything that you can use. Looking at you, Amazon, right? And I'm going to do that, promote that, market that, and be happy to give it away. Giving away things is awesome. I think helping people is awesome. I'm telling you, there are few things that feel as great as being there for other people. I know it sounds quaint and it sounds corny, but it's true. There have been times when I've had access to a lot of money, and it paled in comparison to seeing the joy in someone's face when you're there for them, when you're able to help them. And they're so appreciative, they're so grateful, and you can see that, you can feel it. And that to me trumps anything else. Anything else. Not to say that money is no bad or anything. Get your money. Go capitalism. But when it comes down to it, life is about people. Everything we do, if we really think about it, if we really carefully think about it, it's for people. Our whole lives are wrapped up in people. I was talking to a young lady about this one time, and she was like, no, I don't like people. And I was like, yes, you do. You're in love with people. In fact, all of humanity is one giant love affair with one another, but it's like a fractured love affair because we've been hurt from one another, so we don't trust each other, but we still love each other. We're obsessed. And she was like, no, that's not true. I don't like people. I like to be with myself. I said, interesting. So what do you do when you're by yourself? So, I watch television. Yeah, which is characters, right? People on TV. She said, yeah, and I go on my phone, which is what? Talking to people. If you really wanted to live without people, without getting stuff from people, interacting with people, enjoying the things that people create, like you'd have to live in an island in complete isolation. And I am certain people would find that miserable. To prove my point, the worst thing they could do to you in prison, and you're already in a place that's filled with some bad people, rapists, murderers, not all of them, I remember 50% nonviolent offenders, but a lot of them are there for a reason. And yet the worst thing they can do to you in prison is put you in solitary confinement. If that's not proof that the great story of humanity is love for one another, I don't know what is. That's it, people. Okay, now we're about to round up the hour. It's about to be 8 o'clock. I just want to say thank you all of you. God bless. Thank you for tuning in. Please tune in tomorrow. I will be on air again at 7 o'clock. Yes, every weekday at 7 o'clock. And call in. Got to hear from the people. Don't be shy. This is your show too. Again, I want to tell you, have a great night. Thank you for being here. It's been my pleasure to service all of you. And you have a great night. Take care.